All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unauthentic Leadership. I am one of your hosts, Colonel Matt Smith, U.S. Air Force retired, along with Kim Ellsworth. And we are fortunately joined today by Liz Scott, who is one of the founders of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. Liz, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And so, Liz, you guys I guess by the nature of the days of the summer or the month of the summer, just wrapped up. I've been following along the lemonade stands all summer, and all the pictures, everything has been awesome. And we saw that all the stuff that you guys did, from the fundraising in Philadelphia to the silent auctions to absolutely everything. Could you just kind of take us through just the lemonade stand, essentially the month of June, and just talk about what that means to you, and arguably what goal that you're trying to achieve, just from a personal perspective and then just from an organizational perspective?
Yes, I'd love to. So really, when we talk about Lemonade Days, it really originated with my daughter, Alex. You can see here. She fought cancer her whole life, and she decided when she was 4 that she was going to have a lemonade stand. And her idea was she would give the money to, quote, her doctor so they could help kids the way they helped her. So it really came from her gratitude for those times when she was in pain and not feeling well, and she received therapy that relieved her pain and made her feel better. That was 25 years ago, and we thought it was a one-time thing. We were obviously very proud and surprised, didn't think it would make a huge impact in the world of childhood cancer, but knew it was important to her. And I guess you could say the rest is history. She raised $2,000 that first day. We were absolutely blown away. And then she continued in her lifetime every year to have a lemonade stand. And every year it grew and people heard about it through really traditional media. It was early 2000s, so there was no social media to speak of. Then fast forward to 2004, she sets $1 million goal. And that's how Lemonade Days began, which is what we've just wrapped up. And her idea was, she already saw that people wanted to help. If everyone has lemonade stands or supports lemonade stands, we could raise $1 million to help kids with cancer. And that's how it started. And now, more than 20 years after she had that first Lemonade Day, she did reach her goal, by the way, before she passed away. We are continuing this annual tradition with thousands of lemonade stands. This is our biggest Lemonade Days ever, happening virtually in every state in the U.S. And the idea is that everyone can be a part of curing childhood cancer and helping families whose children have cancer, and that we can raise $1 million through all these small donations. And we've been doing that now since Alex passed away, and we will continue to do it until we don't need to do it anymore.
Well, Liz, we appreciate you and Jay very, very much, and we appreciate what you guys do. And I'm going to go here in a second and talk about our relationship, my relationship, the Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, and what we do for Lemonade Days. Before I do that, Kim, you want to interject or ask a question based on what Liz said?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, and this is obviously a very unique podcast, but I just maybe give you an opportunity to talk about Alex, your daughter, and the person that you knew and the legacy that you honor here every year going forward.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting because to most people who've heard of her, she's a lemonade girl and she's this, hero, which clearly she is, and an inspiration. But she was a little girl. She was our daughter. And she was diagnosed as an infant with neuroblastoma, which is the most common infant cancer. And she lived the rest of her life fighting that cancer till she died at the age of 8.5. But she was much more than that, right? She liked all the same things that a lot of other kids like. She loved when she had the opportunity to go to school. She was often too sick or getting treatment. She loved being able to do things that I think, honestly, most people take for granted and most kids take for granted. She lived her life, as you might expect, really for the good days, and always wanted to make the most and have fun and do what she could do on those days she was feeling really good. I think the most unique thing about her, though, was her super strong will, which I always say would have been interesting to have her as a teenager. I would have loved the opportunity. Her super strong will, her determination, but really her incredible strength and grace to not only fight her own cancer, and actually as it got harder for her and she got sicker, she became more determined to try to help other kids. And to do that at any age is remarkable, but to do it at 6, 7, 8 years old, it's almost hard for me to even understand sort of the depth of her strength and her empathy and her ability to look past herself and try to make a better future for other kids. And so she was all those things. She was just a little girl who wanted to grow up, but she also had this incredible quiet strength. She was not a outgoing person. She actually did not like all the attention she got from her lemonade stand. She literally saw it as a means to an end. If she could get people's attention, she could ask them to have a stand or to donate. She was a pretty reserved person in that way. And honestly, questioned why people made such a big deal out of her, in her words, just doing the right thing. So she had a lot of the qualities that I honestly strive for in my life. And she was only 8 years old.
And so I appreciate that, Liz. If I have to pause it and during this, I would argue that my strength probably is it's not anywhere to the level that Alex and Peyton had. So just maybe give me a moment of grace. I appreciate it. So
I understand completely.
Yeah. One of the things that you guys do, and I love it, and at the same time, I wish it was my son as well, and I wish it was Alex. Each day, you guys profile like a childhood cancer survivor, someone who's thriving, moving on with their lives and all that sort of stuff. And you know what it's like when you're in the mix, you're hoping that Alex has a great day, you're hoping that Peyton has a good day, and those are the days that they live for, and those are the days that we live for, right? And you just appreciate it. And the way that I thought about with Peyton was I knew he was sick, and obviously, we, just like you, we dealt with all of that, and we looked at it as, at least we have this time now. And then the way that I had to look at it when he was gone is, and I thought about this while he was alive, is like, well, at least we had that time with him. So it was an appreciation for the time that we had, and it was appreciation for the time that we have together and the time that we had. And that's, I think that's what any, parent of a sick child goes through, regardless if it's cancer or otherwise, is they just appreciate those small moments and stuff like that. And that's what we've tried to do with Air Peyton, and we call it the Air Peyton events, if you will, because when Peyton went and he had a Make-A-Wish, and I'm sorry for not knowing if Alex ever did anything with like Make-A-Wish.
She did, yeah. She did Disney, typical. It was a great trip, though. Yeah.
That's awesome. Make-A-Wish is an amazing organization and just heroic individuals. And I don't use that term heroic lightly, but anyways, Peyton was a total sneakerhead, and he loved sneakers. He loved fashion. I don't know where you get that from, because I am probably one of the most unfashionable people, which is why I joined the Air Force.
It's funny. Alex also loved fashion, and she was constantly sort of critiquing my choices if I had to look good for something.
Right. And I look back at some of the old videos you guys had, the VHS videos of like, I think they were VHS. They look very different than the videos from today of just Alex in her dress or whatever.
She had the hat, the earrings, the bracelets, everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You got to make sure you're looking good. And Peyton was the same way. But he was like, I mean, Liz, he totally loved sneakers. He loved everything about them, how they were made, where they were made, the colorways, the designs, the meaning behind them. And he knew all of them, not just Nikes and all that sort of stuff. But so we work with Make-A-Wish Vermont and Make-A-Wish Oregon. Peyton gets his wish granted through Make-A-Wish Vermont. We go out to Oregon, Nike headquarters, and Peyton, essentially designs his own Air Jordan, right? His own Air Jordan 4, Air Force colors, all the places he's lived. And up to that point, he lived in 7 different locations, all over the world. So he meets, the folks who initially designed the original Air Jordan. And so that's why we named,
cool.
the events that we do Air Peyton, because on the inside tongue of Peyton's sneaker it says Air Peyton, just like it says Air Jordan on all the Air Jordans. So that's kind of why we came up with it. So that event itself, Air Peyton, started out just as kind of like a humble 5K, get together. We do a local raffle and all that. Our goal this year is $30,000, which is probably going to put us, having supported Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, north of $100,000, which is pretty awesome. That's our goal, is to grow that bigger and bigger in every year. It's not a nonprofit. In other words, we associate ourselves with you guys. Annie and I manage it, and with support through Cam and other people. And then we've also added this, last year and this year, we do like a yard sale. And you think like, oh, just a yard sale, how much money, can you make? Well, it's kind of like, how much kind of money can you make from a lemonade stand? And we've already done one, Liz, and we've made $3,000, and we've got another one.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. We've got another one coming up next month, which is a 2-day sale. And we probably anticipate that even before we start our Air Peyton formal event in September, we'll probably have made anywhere between $6,000 to $7,000, which will
That's
probably
incredible.
add. Yeah, which is awesome. And I say that in the context of you guys, not that you know every social media post that you do, but you guys just recognized a cancer survivor, a young girl who had, I believe, like a sort of a nerve disorder, which affected her right hand. And she went and saw Dr. Dubois, who is at the Jimmy Fund, Dana-Farber Clinic Jimmy Fund in Boston, and that was Peyton's doctor. So when all options were out for us, when we worked with Mass Gen, which was awesome, we went to the Jimmy Fund as well. And the Jimmy Fund, the doctor that we specifically work with for Ewing sarcoma is Dr. Dubois. And all his funding for all the research that he does comes from you guys. So
yeah, he's great. He's an absolute fantastic doctor and researcher.
He is. He's unbelievable. And like when you think about these people, you think like whatever, you think Red Sox, you think Jimmy Fund, you think Dana-Farber, you think Mass Gen, all these massive institutions, right? Because then physically they are massive, but really they're not. I mean, Dr. Dubois, it literally is a singular human being with a very, very small research team. He's a research, obviously, doctor in and of himself, but like you think like, oh, well, there's this entire team working on pediatric cancer research, whether it's glioblastomas or whether it's ALL, whether it's Ewing sarcoma, osteosarcoma, or whatever. And it's not, it's a very, very small team. And so when he explained to us the impact that you guys have on him, that's, regardless, Liz, of what happened to Peyton, that's when we knew that we needed to work with you guys. So that's kind of like, that completes the circle. But I thought it was important to share that with you because the way in which he talks about it and the work that he does. And I hope that he receives all the money that he needs, not necessarily just from you, but just from everybody that's ever thinking about donating money to pediatric cancer research. I hope they consider people like Dr. Dubois because he is amazing and just blown away by his level of intellect, his level of empathy, right? And just how he ties it all together and how he treats the kids. It's amazing.
He's really incredible. He's on our scientific advisory board as well. And he gives us a lot of good counsel on projects to choose and kind of direction for how we might spend our funding.
Liz, if you could maybe just talk to, as your organization has grown and the unfortunate manner of which you have come to find out the magnitude of what that is in the country. You talk about the survivors and then unfortunately people like Peyton that maybe you've helped but didn't survive. But like if you just talk about the size of this and then maybe specifically, like Matt's always done a good job of talking about how this funding is pushing forward, whether they're trials or, outside of the standard treatment, and how you guys are funding and giving kids chances and giving families chances at a future.
We learned through Alex's fight that there was a huge disconnect between families who were willing to try something new, like we were, innovative therapy, like you were, Matt, right? Like give your child a chance at being cured with something new, an experimental therapy, and the availability of those. So since the beginning, even when Alex was alive, we started asking doctors at different hospitals, what can't you get funding for? Like, what's the problem? Why are kids waiting for new therapies? And they said, well, we have some new therapies and we know there are kids who need them, but there's no funding for the infrastructure. So that's an example of, and that's actually the grant that Steve Du Bois is talking about that we give to Dana-Farber. No one's paying for clinical trials for children with cancer for the most part. So we started funding the infrastructure, like as we would say, the non-sexy stuff, like you need a data manager and you need a nurse coordinator to get the families onto the trials. And since then, over the past 20 plus years, we've been continuing to look at the gap. So now we're to the point where we've raised over $350 million. We are the largest currently independent funder of pediatric cancer research outside the government. So meaning we're not connected to one institution. We fund all across the US and Canada, by the way. And we have a competitive grant review process. So we let researchers know that we are interested in funding everything from new scientists. We want to bring new people into the field to make sure that we can get the best and the brightest studying pediatric cancer. We want to fund innovative early science. So an experienced researcher has a new idea for something they think might help kids with cancer. We give them seed funding for a couple of years to prove whether to try it out, basically to do their experiments. And then we fund everything through to clinical trials. We give doctors money who are an idea that they want to get into a trial. We'll pay for those couple of years of prep work to open the trial. And then we fund all the way through to clinical trials. So that's a long technical way of saying, basically, as we've grown, we've been able to fill more of the gaps from discovery to making sure that kids can get those treatments. And there's been many success stories. The story you just talked about, I believe you're talking about Lakeland. That's an example of a success story. There's many of them. Honestly, Alex would be a success story. If she was diagnosed today, we learned from having her tumor sequenced, she would most likely have a cure, and it would be a pill, less toxic. There's very few side effects from it, but she had this particular mutation that it works against and shuts down the cancer. That is from funding from Alex's. That's the kind of thing we're doing. So we've seen survival rates go from 75% to over 85% overall in this country, in the US, for kids with cancer. But that still means 15% aren't being cured. So that's where we're focusing on incurable cancers, hard to treat cancers, cancers that require, which is pretty much all of them, a huge amount of toxicity. So we're trying to change that paradigm. We want kids to be cured and have the chance to be healthy, not to be cured at the cost of their long-term health, which is what's happening now. So there's a lot more work to be done, but we've seen that we can do it by investing in the best research out there and making sure that we're supporting families. So Lakeland's family is another example. We provide travel support. So if they had to travel from a distance to have access to this therapy, we pay for the families. We have a team of 4. We pay for the families to come to whatever institution they need to go to so that they can have access to those treatments and a lot of other family support programs. And it's been an absolute pleasure to see what Alex created turn into real progress beyond anything I could have imagined for kids with cancer.
Yeah, as you were talking, Liz, and I totally forgot like the 7 questions I had because I was listening to what you were saying. So pardon me for not having probably a great follow-on question, but the thing that I love the most is just listening to you talk. But the fact that you mentioned Alex's name so much, I think is like highlight of the podcast is the fact that you talk about her so much. That's awesome. So I guess Peyton had one of those really difficult to treat cancers, right? And the bone cancers are tough. It's kind of like the brain cancers are tough, right? Just because.
Yeah, they're 2 of the toughest at this point.
What's that?
The sarcomas and the brain cancers.
Right, exactly, right. And I'm not a clinical research, pediatric oncologist or anything like that, but I do try to read as much as I can specifically about, just that sort of stuff. And I know that all of us are trying to do our best. Of course, there's the how to treat, what to treat, and all that sort of stuff, but also there's the early detection stuff or aspect of it, too. So I guess my question to you is like, when you mentioned the Canadian piece and I just finished a book called Hope by Terry Fox, and Terry, he was diagnosed with osteosarcoma and did the Marathon of Hope. And in fact, the anniversary of his death was just a couple days ago on Saturday. And
he's a huge, huge inspiration of mine.
Yeah, same here. And this year, the Air Peyton event that we're doing here in Vermont is on the same day as the Terry Fox Foundation, the Terry Fox Run in Canada. So, which is pretty awesome. And we've never really made the connection with the Terry Fox family, and we're not to that level, but I'm certainly to that level with inspiration that I have for Alex and the inspiration that I have for Terry Fox, which is amazing. And Cam can tell stories about literally the entire country doing Terry Fox runs growing up and all that sort of stuff. But I guess, you look at the impact that Terry had, and, in the book Hope, I mean, he put pediatric cancer research, really from in the 1980s, 10 years ahead of anywhere else in the world because of the money that he raised. And
the awareness, I think, was huge.
And the awareness piece, right? And the stigma and all that sort of stuff. And I always felt like, at least reading that, I feel like Canada has done a wonderful job of not placing the stigmas and really embracing it and all that sort of stuff. And I still think culturally as Americans, like, this is just Matt Smith's perspective, I just think we've got a little bit of ways to go just to kind of, bring it into the fold and to make it part of a normal conversation, and to talk about our loved ones, that have passed and the loved ones that have survived, and talk about it in a way to normalize it so that we can bring awareness to it. But, do you want to just talk to, and Liz, you've been on this journey for 25 plus years, but do you want to talk just about that level of awareness? Of course, the scientific piece to it is exceptionally important, but do you want to just talk about the awareness piece? Because that's the piece that Cam and we really try to spend a lot of time on, is bringing awareness to efforts that are ongoing and to bring awareness to people that may not know.
I think the biggest piece of awareness that most people are surprised, sort of like the facts that people are surprised by, is it's kind of 2 sides to one bad coin, which is pediatric cancer, despite the progress we've made, and despite stories that are shared of survivors, is still the number one disease killer of children in the US. And it has been for decades and decades. And it basically takes the lives of more children than the next 5 diseases combined. Second cause of death behind accidents in children under the age of 18. So that is still a fact. And then you combine that with the other disheartening fact that childhood cancer relies very heavily on philanthropy and organizations like Alex's Lemonade Stand to fund research because the private sector is not doing a lot of pediatric cancer research. There's not enough, although it's the most common disease killer of children in this country. It's 20 some different diseases, really. There's not a business model to develop a drug specifically for pediatric cancer for a drug company for most, relying very heavily on the government for funding as well. And the government traditionally is, let's just say, about less than 5% of their entire cancer research budget goes to support pediatric cancer research. So you combine those two things where it's a number one disease killer and the funding has been terrible for decades. And it seems really discouraging. On the positive, I think because of those things and because of the will and the passion of people like Dr. Du Bois and all the doctors that we met and who inspired Alex to do more, is a community that works together collaboratively. And it's a community that has learned to do a lot with less money because they've had to. So that's the opportunity, I think. And that's, I think, the awareness piece that surprises people. Like, it's a cause that needs help, but you can actually have an impact through small things like Alex showed us, all those small things adding up to big change and making real progress with, let's face it, like, even though we've raised a lot of money, a relatively small amount of money compared to what's spent in the entire cancer research world.
One of the things, Liz, that Dr. Du Bois would always talk about is when the primary modality therapies ran out. And if you were seeing somebody like him, it meant that you're kind of out of options, but just really the amount of money that he needed to continue the trial for each patient. And I think people think that it's literally in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to carry on, and it's not. And he would sometimes, just refer to like, what I'm trying to do or what I'm asking to do, is on order of, he would always use the number of $10,000. He's like, that's what we need. That's when I get done doing all the math and all that sort of stuff, this work matters and this money matters. And I think it's really disappointing. I think it's disappointing, Liz, the amount of energy and money that we spend on it. And not just him, but I've heard other doctors just at Mass Gen and Children's and stuff like that talk about it. And that if someone gets whatever, prostate cancer, they get breast cancer, they can advocate for themselves, right? Like, it's easier to see the human, that person is 30 something years old or 20 something years old or 40, 50, whatever. But, like Alex and Peyton and others, they're just trying to survive, right? They just want to go to school. They just want to be a normal kid and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's, to me, is a very heartbreaking piece is, maybe some kid's going to go testify in front of Congress, or maybe some kid's going to go do something or whatever. But I think that's where it gets lost is in that. And that's just a heartbreaking element of it. But to bring it all back around, the legacy that Alex has left, all of us, and how we honor her and how we honor, at least we try to honor you guys in the foundation, is just, I think, so meaningful. And despite what the craziness that is today, and despite just the lack of attention to it, I think what you guys are doing is on the order of just heroic. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I agree with you on, there are times, less now because it's been over 20 years since Alex died. So you sort of, I don't know if you just learn to push those feelings down or probably more likely came to peace with some things. But one of the things that I was really pretty angry about, even though Alex's story is so inspirational, was the fact that she had to set up a lemonade stand to try to raise money to cure cancer, right? Like, she has a 4-year-old, has a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and other kids across the country. It's amazing that this movement is making this happen, but it's also really sad and almost shameful, right? That children have to have lemonade stands and bake sales and do all these things to help find a cure for kids with cancer. That there was an element of me that felt pretty sour, to use a pun with lemonade, pretty sour over that for many years. There would be those moments where I was like, you know what, this is just wrong. There's that whole side of it. But at the end of the day, it's really amazing and inspirational. And of course, kids can be a part of solving problems. That's amazing that kids can solve problems.
Yeah. I find that so many of our great ideas come from our younger generation. And if you just listen to them, one of the things I talk about in my leadership philosophy, Liz, is just listening to understand, right? Not listening to refute, not listening to talk next, not listening to do whatever, but listening to understand. Because you might actually not just learn something, but you might actually be inspired to do something with what it is you're listening to.
Especially now, everybody seems like they like disagreeing with each other. And sometimes it's nice just to listen and hear where somebody's coming from, hear their perspective and respect it, even if you don't always want to. And because you disagree, you can still respect somebody to a certain extent.
No, absolutely. And on a humorous note, Liz, I mean, I've really had to struggle with the fact that you guys are like Eagles fans and Phillies and all that sort of stuff. And you guys have won some Super Bowls recently and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, are you a Patriots fan?
Yes.
Yeah.
very
Well,
much
I
so.
mean,
Yeah,
you
things have
can't,
been so tough in
you
Boston.
can't complain
It's so
about not
hard.
having championships
No, I
at
know.
all.
I know.
But it's funny because, everybody hated the Patriots. You may not want to hear this for a long time.
Right.
And now I feel like people are hating on the Eagles. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's just the sign of a team that wins.
Yeah.
If you don't have haters, you're probably not winning a whole
Right.
heck
No,
of a
I
lot.
absolutely agree. And yeah, I know. And there's some people, I mean, the Eagles Foundation, the Eagles or as an organization, I mean,
Yeah,
what's
I agree.
what's not to love, right? I mean, whether it's just everything, all their work with just the inner city piece, they're
And autism, they do amazing work with autism.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our last podcast we had, Liz, we were trying to bring awareness to autism, and just an amazing young man, just multiple gold medals in hockey. In golf and skiing and all that sort of stuff from Massachusetts. And yeah, so it's really amazing. And of course it's hard not to love Jason Kelsey and Jalen Hurts and
Yeah, they
that
seem
whole
like
clan.
good guys. I don't know them, but they seem like good guys. We grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, so we were in Patriots territory, but it took us a while to become Eagles fans. I mean, we've been here 25 years, and they got our attention when they started winning. I'm not going to lie.
Well, good. We appreciate the New England roots. So
Yeah, my son went to UMass actually. UMass
Okay.
Amherst. Yep.
Okay, outstanding.
Shared with you before, like Alex's lemonade stand, or Peyton, like before I met Matt and heard his story, I wasn't aware of Alex or the lemonade stand, right? And so you're doing this unbelievable work of $350 million. And there's just maybe that lack of awareness until either you know somebody that it happened to or it happens to yourself. Is there any progress in trying to get more than 5% of said government funding? Because obviously you're spending a ton of time and you're doing incredible work for all of these kids and families. Is there an arm of your organization, or is there a place that you could point to that's just advocating for these families and these kids, so that when that next family hears those words, it's not met with all of those facts? It's the good news of what you're doing, and there's a movement to try to make things better at the government level, which it sounds like was desperately needed.
Yes. So we don't, as an organization, we don't have advocacy as part of our mission. There are several groups that do it and do it pretty well, meaning obviously we're advocates for more funding and we're advocates for children with cancer, but we don't do sort of the traditional political advocacy. We don't have a presence with lobbyists, or in Washington, we don't plan days where everybody goes to the Hill, but there are groups that do that. Several of them, and there's many ways for parents to engage with them. There's a huge effort in June where there's a bunch of groups that work together to bring families to and train them to go to DC and to meet, with people on the Hill about funding. And there's been some good things that have come from that. So if that's somebody's particular interest, I would encourage them to do it. We do have somebody on staff here, call her a resources coordinator. If a family is interested in that, they need support. Their child has cancer and they can't work, and now they can't pay their rent or their mortgage. We have someone on staff who, if we can't support them directly, has a huge network of other organizations that she knows. I mean, hundreds of other organizations that she can connect them directly to. So we can be that sort of one-stop shopping, so families don't have to kind of figure it all out themselves. So for whether it's advocacy or they need support of some type, or they want their kids to go to camp for kids with cancer, we have somebody here who can help make that happen.
It's Fantastic. Thank you.
But we know a lot of those groups who do that work, and it's hard work, and you have to have a really good mind and a good expertise in it. And it's not my mind or expertise, but I'm glad there are groups that do that work and do it well.
Liz, I think you're tracking, but if not, you've heard of the Fisher Houses before. Is that true?
No, I have not.
No. So Fisher House they provide housing for veterans, military families, and all that sort of stuff. And whether it's people that need, that are coming back from combat, that are wounded, that need support overseas or perhaps stateside. And it allows the family an opportunity to be connected to their loved one, either as an active duty service member, or perhaps even as a veteran who requires certain types of care. And the housing itself the housing / accommodations is all through donations. And when I was receiving support specifically from you, the Alexandra Foundation in Boston through Dr. Du Bois, one of the organizations was Fisher House Boston. And because Boston obviously is very small, obviously the housing situation there is very challenging. What they did is Fisher House Boston would partner with hotels, and in this case, Marriott in Boston, to provide housing for families, because you know what it was like with Alex. When you needed to go to the doctor, you needed to go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, I can make reservations 2 weeks from now and then we'll go and all that sort of stuff. It was normally always, at least for us, it was a crisis situation, right? Like, hey, we need to go see the doctor. We need to go see the doctor now. And so her name is Jen DeLuca, and she is in charge. She's essentially the CEO or COO of Fisher House Boston, and she's amazing. And when you were talking before just about those other organizations, it came to mind that, it takes a village, right? Like, if those resources aren't there from a governmental level, how is it going to get done? Well, it's through the philanthropy that you guys provide in many, many different ways. And it's through organizations like Fisher House Boston. It just so happens that I'm a veteran. My wife's a veteran. And, Peyton at the time was a military dependent of ours. And so we would stay in the hotels in Boston.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And it was...
I'll make sure that our resource navigator is aware for military families who might be looking for support, that there may be one specific that might not be on her radar.
And Liz, that doesn't, if it's Sloan Kettering, there's someone in New York City. If it's
right,
if it's CHOP, if it's, whatever, they exist all over the country, because everyone's like, well, why don't you just file like a travel voucher? You know what I mean? Like file your receipts and all, all that sort of stuff. And you're thinking to yourself, I laugh because it's like, do you really think the military is going to pay for all that and whatnot? And the answer is no. So, and I appreciate that you guys actually, just provide stipends and support to families, because that's a piece that a lot of folks don't talk about, is how expensive it is to try to, you're stressed about so many different things. And the last thing that you want to be worried about is the financial aspect of it. But yet most of these institutions you need to go to in the cities, it's expensive to get there. It's expensive to stay there and all that sort of stuff.
You need food. Yeah. Everything is expensive. Lodging. We traveled to Philadelphia for 2 years before we finally moved here. And part of that move was because it was hard to keep having to last minute come and figure out if Ronald McDonald House was full, where we were going to stay, right, and paying for the hotels. And it just wasn't working for our family to be doing that.
Yeah. I never thought like a $40, Uber Eats thing would be like, you think like, oh, it's just $40. And it's like, sometimes it's like you're holding on to like a gold bar. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Or, whatever, a coupon for some.
No, it adds up, and you'd have to really have a lot of financial resources to have your child fight cancer for a significant amount of time.
Right.
And not feel the impact.
Liz, I'm going to give Cam some time for question here, but I really wanted to say before our time is up, I just wanted to say thank you to you and Jay for doing what you do. And I don't know, and I mean this in all sincerity, I don't know how you do what you do every day, because it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of work. I talk to Christy often. She's amazing. I love working with her. And for as long as I'm alive, and Danny, we will continue to support Alexandra Foundation through the Peyton events that we do. We believe in you all. We believe in Alex. We believe in the impact that people like Alex and Peyton have had on our lives. And I just want to say, and just let you know that the level of just amazingness that you are, and just, I guess, the love that we have for your organization is real. And we appreciate you very, very much. So
wow,
thank you.
Well, thank you. And I would say the same to you. It's an honor to have your support. And anytime a family remembers their child in that way, and then we're the beneficiary, is really something that we has deep meaning to us. So I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it, and I promise the next time we do a podcast, and hopefully this is not the last time. Hopefully, we can maybe get Jay on, or who knows, whatever. Kim and I, we were looking for our lemonade shirts or lemonade colored shirts, and let's just say we don't necessarily have it. I have Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation.
I love it. There you, I see it
on my shirt, and Cam has it on his, but we need to get some fancy pants, yellow ones. We've got our kit in our basement that we set up every time we do our stand. But
oh, good.
Yeah, Cam.
Yeah. I guess just for me and Liz, again, I would just share the gratitude for your time today and just the knowledge and what you do. I was fortunate enough to be, again, connected with Matt, and I was at his retirement, and I know Peyton's left a large legacy and impact on him. And one of the things that he's talked about, and Matt, I'd ask for maybe you to share it if you could, about, the last part of your, retirement towel, if you could maybe tell that story, and then just talk about Peyton a little, and if you could, and then Liz, give you the final word of that same thing of like kind of what I think we've heard it today, but what keeps you going, and obviously you had Alex for eight and a half years, and here you are today continuing to fight, but just kind of those things that keep you going. If that would, in my mind, be fitting to end of the legacy and the impact that your children have had on you.
Yeah. So Liz, I know it's tough to say, but it says keep on fighting at the bottom. Anyways, I did a retirement speech, and the last thing I talked about was keep on fighting. And so it was something that Peyton would always tell me. And I'm thinking, like, here's this 16, 17-year-old kid who's telling this to me, right? I'm supposed to be the inspirational one. I'm supposed to be the one that's motivating him and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that I was training for was the Boston Marathon, through Mass Gen at the time. I also have run the marathon with Fisher House Boston since. And Liz, I'm more of this guy that's built like a football player, maybe baseball player, and less like a marathon runner. And then it's Vermont in the wintertime, because the Boston Marathon's in April. So you got to run literally through the winter of Vermont and all that. And one day Peyton's lying on the couch and he's not having a good day at all. And I know I got a long run. I think it was like a 14-mile run. And I'm tying my shoes, and I'm getting literally all of my winter clothes on because it's freezing outside. And Peyton turns to me and goes, "You just have to keep on fighting." And I just thought, like, wow, like, here's this guy, who's just sick as can be. And he's inspiring me to go out and run. So I use that in my retirement speech, and then I wear it on my watch, which is the little thing which says, like, in the event of finding me in the snowbank, please call these people. At the bottom of it says, keep on fighting. And so it just serves as my inspirational reminder. It reminds me of Peyton every day. And I know that there's probably many of things that Alex probably inspires you guys on a daily basis as well. But anyways, that was the essence of Cam's question there. And that's the story.
Oh, that's beautiful. I haven't shared this story in a while, but it's so similar in terms of when you think about what keeps you going sort of on the bad days, which I use that word loosely because I think I probably can't even understand the depth of some of Alex's bad days, honestly, and what it was like to be her and live the way she lived. But, when you're having a day where things just maybe aren't clicking or going the way you want them to, we all have those days, even after having, understanding perspective. You still get those days, right? Frustrating days. But she, at the end of her life, was extremely sick, obviously. Matt, you can appreciate this more than others, hopefully. And she wasn't having very many good days, and things were not getting better. They were only getting worse, and we knew that. It was about a month before she passed away. She didn't want to be in the hospital, so we were doing a lot of day trips to the hospital, and then I would used to say it was like our job, and then we'd come home in the evening and we'd sleep at home. And this is the third night in like 10 days where she got into bed at 10, 11. She had a problem. In this case, it was these chronic nosebleeds because it was in her bone marrow, and she just wasn't producing any platelets, and we couldn't keep up with them. And her nose was just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and it can actually become serious because of the loss of blood. And this is the third night that we couldn't stop it with all the tricks they gave us at home. My husband puts her in the car and says, turns around, go into the emergency room at 1 a.m. again, going to be there all night and most of the next day. And he turns to her and he said, "I'm so sorry." And she said, "For what?" And he said, "For everything," because there was really nothing more we could say at that point. She wasn't going to get better. And she didn't even hesitate. And here she is. She's sick to her stomach. She's got wads over her face to stop the blood. And she says, "If there's one thing you should know about me, I'm happy for what I have. not unhappy for what I don't have. And it was just that moment, right? Like my husband called me when he got there, and this was a little pre cell phones, regular cell phones. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's an emergency because he was calling me at 2 a.m. And he said, I have to tell you what Alex said. And it was just so profound because she was really having a bad day. I mean, that's almost feels silly to call it a bad day. She was suffering so much. And, when you're having a bad day and you can feel that way, because it's easy to feel that way when you're having a good day, right? Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for what I have. But when you can feel that way when you're really having a bad day and you don't have a reason to feel hopeful, in my opinion, about things getting better, it really spoke to her strength and her ability to live her life the way she did. And I think of that still so often when you have those big and little moments where you just feel frustrated or ungrateful or making a bigger deal out of something that's really not a big deal in the scheme of life. And I think I really need to be happy for what I have. And it was just a gift, I feel like, that she left to us as her parents and her family to know that she could live her life that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great story. That's like one of my favorite stories. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so we
Liz.
learned, Peyton and Alex and all these kids, they get this wisdom that I guess I wish they didn't need to have. But
True.
it's beyond inspiring. It's really, being role models, I think, to us as their parents on how to live our lives and how to live our lives without them, honestly, is really what
Yeah,
they're teaching us in some ways. Keep on fighting, right?
absolutely.
Well, thank
Thank
you so much for sharing everything and for all that you do. To hear these stories is incredibly impactful, and we will be putting up all of our links and things of that nature. So if anybody is able to, please donate, and knowing that this is going to doctors and to scientists and to research and to trying to give families opportunities to not share these stories but more successful ones, and like you're sharing on your website. But I just thank you for your time today, and Matt for sharing your story as well. I don't know that we've done that publicly, and Liz, thank you for your time. So
Thank
appreciate you
you.
guys very much.
It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. And please, can you give all of our best to everyone who works in the office there?
I
We know,
will.
I don't know how many hours they work, but they seemingly answer every question at every hour that you would ask a
Yeah,
question.
we have a good group of people
You
here,
have an amazing
and
group.
Christy has a personal connection too. He had a nephew with cancer, so she's really
Yeah,
passionate and pushed to make sure we change things for families.
yeah, she's awesome. But thank you, Liz, very much.
Thank you.
Very best to the family, and hopefully
All right.
someday we can meet in person.
I would love that. All right, take care, guys. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.